Hi, this is Yvette Francina with another episode of Carpe Diem Connections, and I'm here with Lawrence Coburn of Twine. I met him on a Twine meeting, which is a new app. It's really interesting. I'm going to let him tell you all about it and what the plans are for the future for this app. So take it away, Lawrence.
Sure. Thanks, Yvette. Thanks for having me on. Twine, we like to call Twine a platform for meaningful one-to-one conversation. So what does that mean? It basically means that you can come to twine.nyc and you can choose questions and topics that are important to you. And we will do our best to match you with people around the world that are also interested in talking about those things. And we do some kind of interesting things, like we put a countdown clock on it, we overlay the question. And so what we're trying to do is to accelerate the path to real human connection so that you meet people in deep, meaningful ways and get to talk about things that maybe you don't have a chance to talk about with other people. So that's the quick high level.
Yeah, which is super cool. And again, my first experience on Twine was meeting you, and I was really interested in the app, and social connection and deep connection, meaningful connection is one of the main topics of my podcast here. So it worked really well in kind of pairing me up with somebody I was interested in. But I just love those deep, meaningful conversations with anyone. I think, like a lot of people, I do want to sort of cut through the small talk and start to get to know the real person. So I commend you for
it's really
those.
interesting you say that. So I tend to be a shy, sort of awkward, introverted person. And I still, when I'm connecting to a stranger on the internet, I feel nervous. I feel like I'm at the top of the roller coaster, and it doesn't actually feel great. But every single time after I've gone through these 8 or 9 minute conversations, I literally have never had a bad experience. It feels sort of cathartic. It kind of feels like I went to the gym or something. So I feel like I'm working some muscle that's good for my mental health that I didn't even know that I needed. So it's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, and I think it's partly interesting. It's hard to do that on the street or even when you're sitting next to someone on the airplane sometimes, because you don't know if they would welcome that, even though all the happiness literature and everybody says that does make them happy and you happy, and that's what we all should do. But what's nice about the app is that you're getting paired with someone else who kind of signed up for it. So it's not like
Yes.
you have to feel like you have to kind of ask permission first. It's just right. And then even on an airplane, or one of those times when we do take that risk and get to know someone, it often usually does start with the small talk piece. And so by the end of the plane ride, hopefully you've gotten to know each other a little more deeply. But I like the way this kind of just fast paths right into it with prompts and things. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And I think there's a whole other angle here, which is interesting, which is if you look at the big social technology companies today, like whether it's Facebook or Instagram or any of the other like big ones, Twitter, they've all embraced sort of a broadcast mode where you're blasting out to a big group, and they've built algorithms that reward the really controversial content, so that the ones that get more likes and reactions are the ones that get surfaced to the top of everybody's feed. And so that's become a different thing. It's almost become like a media thing where the downside is like the bullies get rewarded on those systems, and they're the ones that get their content shared, and more people end up just being quiet and watching the other people participate. And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is there room for a social network where everybody gets to participate and everybody has to participate? There's no sort of lurking on Twine. You're in it. So it's a whole other dynamic. And if you look at Facebook, and I tend to be of the opinion that they're not evil people at Facebook, but I do think that they are slaves to their revenue model, which is advertising. And when you're slaves to advertising, you need to do different things. You need to attract eyeballs at all costs. You need to drive clicks. And so controversial content drives clicks. So it ends up pushing them in a way that maybe is not great for actual human connection. So that we're hoping there's an opportunity in there somewhere.
Yeah, Yeah, it's super interesting. And I know one of the reasons I was interested is because I had started a new Facebook group called Snowbird, Single Snowbirds. And I wanted, and I'm sure a lot of others that start new groups are like this, they want to find ways that people can communicate and get to know one another. But as you said, it's a little bit awkward, or you don't feel like you really get to know somebody from a group atmosphere as much as if you can do that one-on-one. And so I know we talked a little bit earlier and you were talking about some strategies going forward with Twine about how you may be able to facilitate those kinds of conversations within groups. Do you have those slides available? Do you want to kind of walk
Yeah,
us through that?
I do. And I guess before I even pull up a slide, I'll say like we're at a really kind of interesting fork in the road where, um, one path has us trying to build like a Facebook competitor, like a new kind of social network. And then the other path is bringing our format, this kind of meaningful one-to-one conversation, to existing communities. So it's a sort of a classic, do we build our own community or do we power other communities?
Mhm.
And right now we're leaning towards powering other communities because we bring a sort of a magical dynamic. And if you, right now in sort of the coronavirus uh, landscape, a lot of communities that used to rely on face-to-face interactions, whether they're meetups or networking events, like conferences, events, like they're all kind of on the bench, like they can't do anything. And so all of these communities are starting to decay because the human interaction between the members is not there.
Mhm.
So we're thinking that here's a chance for us to take our technology, our experience to communities, anywhere from the snowbirds community that you just talk about, all the way to sort of companies that are suddenly work from home that can no longer have those sort of water cooler moments, even to creators, like people that have big audiences and want to start to put them together to actually build a community. We think there's lots of opportunity there. So that's kind
Yeah.
of a direction that we're going. I could share a slide, but I think maybe that's kind of the full thing is like, if you have a community and you're looking for ways to interact in the age of coronavirus, maybe reach out to Yvette or to me and maybe we can help spin something up for you.
Yeah, I think especially during this time where people are starting to feel isolated, not starting to, I mean, they've been feeling isolated and finding different ways. I know I hear so often about how dangerous that is, how dangerous loneliness is. And so finding ways to facilitate connection in spite of, coronavirus is, I think, so valuable. And even with that, even after coronavirus goes away, there are a lot of people who are still really isolated. I also kind of represent the single community. I've been single for a lot of years. And so I know, in fact, I told you when we first met that this app kind of reminded me of a speed date type of app. But a lot of us don't really want to be dating, but we want to be making connections as single people if we're traveling, or if we go on to an event where we want to know who else is kind of single and alone here and how can we get to know them. And so I see all kinds of opportunities for ways that an app like this could really take off and facilitate deep connection between people. So again, I'm super excited about using it more myself and seeing it grow over time, seeing what new features you guys have in store for it, and how I can, be part of that and be at least as a participant. So
Yeah, it's so cool that you mentioned sort of this traveler mindset because there's I know you've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of traveling. I've lived in a bunch of different countries, and there's something about traveling that breaks down the walls a little bit. And so, I know for me, like, I can meet somebody in San Jose, Costa Rica, drinking a beer, and then the next day we're driving or taking the bus off to some beach town and you're rolling with that person for 3 days, and then you meet someone else and you roll with them, and there's this magical letting down of the barriers and just accelerating the path to get to know someone. And I don't even know why that happens while traveling, but it certainly doesn't happen. I live in San Francisco. Like, I'm not going to meet somebody at the coffee shop in a pre-corona world and then suddenly go on a trip with them. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I don't know why it's different, but there's something magical about that traveler mentality. And like, can we inject that traveler mentality into more aspects of our lives?
Yes, absolutely. And even though it's happened a little bit with me, it doesn't happen so much with me because of what we were talking about earlier, that it's really awkward for me to talk to a person that's also traveling, and you kind of again have to have some little indication that they want that too. And so yeah, I'm excited to see where this could go, especially from a solo traveler's perspective. So well, I do have a standard question that's going on with this podcast, since it's Carpe Diem Connections, so you've really covered the connection part. But the Carpe Diem part is also about living a meaningful life, and so I like to ask people, a variety of different kinds of questions, but really what a meaningful life means to them. And if you only had a year left to live, how would you want to be spending it?
Yeah, that's a super intense question, and it's a good one because it makes you question like all of your life choices that you made. I've been thinking about this one, and um, I'll I'll tell you a story from almost exactly a year ago. So a year ago, I turned 50, and it's obviously a big milestone day, and my wife went big on my 50th birthday celebration. And so I'm of Italian descent. I have first cousins in Siena, Italy, and Siena has always been like one of my favorite places in the world. And if you're from Siena or if you're Italian, you know that there's this event that happens every year called the Palio. It's a horse race that's been happening for 600 years. And the horses are not the fastest horses, and they race it through sort of the walled city of Siena, and it ends in sort of the central. It actually, the whole thing happens in the central square of Siena, and it had always been on my bucket list to go to this race. It's kind of like Carnival, like the tomato throwing festival, running with the bulls, like all rolled up into one. Mardi Gras, maybe a little bit of Mardi Gras, but less drinking. And it was always on my list. And so my wife organized this trip, and it was 50 people from my life. It was people from my high school, from my sports teams, from my college, from my grad school, from basketball, from my family, my siblings, and so 50 people from all walks of life converged on Siena, and we all had Airbnbs, and we experienced this ancient sort of festival together. And many of the people did not know each other, but they were all there for me, and they ended up leaving there all like being really close and tight. And it was just such a wonderful experience. So presuming that I had my health for the last year of my existence, I would want to do something like that. I would want to combine a place that I hadn't been to that's on my list, or maybe just Siena again, and bring everybody who wanted to go there and just experience this new world that we were not familiar with, out of our comfort zone, but together with the people that I care about the most. So I think I'd want to recreate that.
That is so awesome. And I just love that. And I have to say, I love your wife, because that is just so I'll tell you, I turned 60 last year, and my thing was similar, that I was going to have 60 celebrations. And so I had a 60 week till 60 party, I said. So, and every week I met with a different person. So similar to you, from all walks of life. Some of them were brand new people, because I very goal driven, and like if I didn't have a person, I was like, so it kind of forced me to do that meeting, to create some new connections. And a couple of those people have become some of my very, very close friends now. And so I picked a different person every week to have a special celebration with, and I asked them to pick a song, and it all culminated on my actual 60th birthday with my kids, and some of my friends who had gifted me with carpediemday.com. And, that's kind of why I'm doing this podcast, is that's my, feeling, is to find things you love to do with people you want to do them with, and that's my idea of a super meaningful life.
There you
So
go.
I love it. But I have to say one thing about yours, getting the 60 people to, thank God you got to do it before COVID, I guess,
Oh,
there. And I felt the same way about being able to do my big trip, my big 60 weeks before COVID hit too. My birthday was in the end of February 2020, so it was right before this all hit. But the other thing that I figured out, because a big birthday party is so hard to coordinate and get people, and it's hard to really spend that one-on-one time. Obviously, you can't spend the one-on-one time because you have this big party. So sort of an unexpected benefit from doing it that way is that I got that one-on-one time, which again, with Twine, that you're saying is so important. And that, it made me recognize that I rarely have that one-on-one time, even with my grown children, because they're with their spouses or they're not at home anymore. And, there's always other people around. So having that personal time with each of those people, and especially, again, even the ones that I had just met, was super beneficial. And so I would encourage you to think about that too. It doesn't have to be a birthday party, or, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in the app, is developing those strong connections. And one of them was by having, a special day with different friends. So.
oh, it's funny you say that. So my co-founder Diana just turned 30, and for her 30th birthday party, she ran a Twine, and she brought all these people from her life, and like 70 people, and it was all these rotating one-on-one conversations.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. So yeah, that's another market there you could go, is birthday parties
Totally.
so
Everybody has birthdays.
and celebrations, and so anyway, you're doing great things. I'm really excited to have met you and found out about Twine, and I will be excited to see where this all goes, and see you on Twine too.
Sounds good. Thanks for
All
that.
right.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having me
very
on.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.